Ladies and gentlemen, once again, please take your seats. We'll have the opportunity to take pictures later on and to meet and greet later on. So please take your seats so we can get started. Thank you so much. If I can ask the press to also take a seat. Thank you very much. Thank you. Just a bit of housekeeping before we start our session. If at any point during the next 2 hours you need to leave the room, please make sure you exit using the back exit and not the side exits. Please, thank you very much. A very good afternoon, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Foliba Thibault from Al Jazeera English, and it's a privilege and pleasure to welcome you on behalf of the United Nations and the European Union to the Spotlight Initiative high-level event, Progress on Perspectives on Eliminating All Forms of Violence Against Women and Girls Worldwide. It was exactly 2 years ago in this same chamber that the European Union and the United Nations joined forces to bring an end to one of the most prevalent crimes in the world today, violence against women and girls. The Spotlight Initiative, which was launched in September of 2017, set out an ambitious target to eliminate all forms of violence against women and girls by 2030. Now, indeed, the need for action is more urgent than ever. The numbers are staggering. 1 in 3 women will experience violence in her lifetime. 650 million girls around the world are married before the age of 18. And in Africa, some 50 million girls are at risk of female genital mutilation between now and 2030. Violence and abuse against women and girls happen every day, at home, at work, at school, on the streets, and even online. It has tremendous personal costs, economic costs, social costs all over the world, and is a major obstacle, as you know, to achieving SDG 5, gender equality. So the Spotlight Initiative has placed this important issue at the center of efforts to achieve gender equality and women's empowerment in line with the 2030 Agenda's focus of leaving no one behind. Since its inception 2 years ago, the initiative has put concrete programs into action, deploying and implementing wide-scale investments in Africa, Asia, Latin America, the Pacific, and the Caribbean to achieve significant improvement in the lives of women and girls. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to draw your attention now to the screen for a short video that will highlight some of the achievements of the EU-UN Spotlight Initiative. Please take a look.
Spotlight เข้ามามนทิรักไทยจูบปัญหาอุปสรรคที่การทำงาน1ค่ะคือแรงงานไม่เคยมี
Las mujeres desde la infancia hemos sufrido cualquier tipo de violencia, sea psicológica, económica, física, e históricamente se ha naturalizado.
Estes desafios, porque a iniciativa Spotlight traz uma abordagem um bocadinho diferente. Não só trabalha com aqueles que são os fazedores, os tomadores de decisões, mas também traz consigo aquilo que são as comunidades mais rurais e que vivem nos locais mais recônditos.
At first, we had a community victim support unit, which was not in good condition. It could not function, and no one could go there and access the services. Spotlight Initiative came in. The building has been refurbished. Now we have got what we have: electricity. We had materials that are supporting people.
A través de iniciativa Spotlight, esperamos que se genere un impacto para que haya una toma de conciencia sobre lo que padecen las mujeres sordas que sufren violencia de género y las diferentes barreras que deben atravesar al no haber acceso a la justicia, porque no hay intérprete de lengua de señas argentina-español, ni mediadoras sordas.
We expect that in the near future, there should be complete elimination of violence against women and girls.
Estas autoridades, digamos la ONU, la Unión Europea, todos los que están participando en esa iniciativa, qué bueno que se han unido y han escogido a México. Esa iniciativa Spotlight realmente viene como a darnos esas esperanzas que nosotras estábamos necesitando.
In the EU-UN Spotlight Initiative, as you can see, and as you saw in that video, there's been significant progress, but there's still a long way to go. Violence against women remains an international crisis that requires even greater focus and commitment from the global community. So in our session today, we'll explore how we can build on the momentum of the Spotlight Initiative and strengthen efforts to stamp out violence against women and girls once and for all. It seems to be a never-ending task, but as Spotlight has shown, it's not an impossible one. We have an impressive gathering of distinguished speakers and guests today. In a moment, we'll hear from the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations. The High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy will be joining us very shortly also. Also with us is the EU Commissioner for International Cooperation and Development and Finland's Minister for Development Cooperation and Foreign Trade. We will also hear from the heads of states and government representatives of the Spotlight Initiative countries. I'd like to acknowledge the President of the Republic of Niger, who's here with us today. Thank you so much. We have with us as well survivors, activists, and champions who are working tirelessly to end violence against women and girls. In our second segment, we'll further explore the progress made in Spotlight Initiative programs and bring in activists and civil society leaders from around the world to discuss the challenges that still remain. Welcome to you all watching us online on UN Web TV. Please tweet and share widely our hashtag Spotlight End Violence. Thank you very much for being here. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor for me now to introduce our host, the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Madam Amina Mohammed.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Folly. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues, and a special thank you to President Youssoufou from Niger and also Prime Minister Holness from Jamaica for joining us here. It's very important that we see the leadership of our heads of government in such a critical issue that we are facing today, a huge challenge that we must see the end of. Violence against women and girls is universally pervasive, and the sheer numbers have led us to normalize its existence, but abuse and violence are never normal. 2 years ago, we, Member States, the United Nations, the European Union, and our partners, the AU and others, committed ourselves to accelerate our efforts to eliminate violence against women and girls. Through the Spotlight Initiative, we are delivering on this commitment. Over the past year, the initiative's comprehensive violence prevention programs have begun operating in 13 countries across Africa and Latin America, with a direct impact on an estimated 38 million women, girls, men, and boys. And this work, I have to give a shout out here, is really by our civil society activists, many of our community groups, but here again, the United Nations, our country teams led by UN Women, UNFPA, have done some marvelous work to bring together that partnership to make sure that we have sustainable outcomes on this scourge. These interventions are slowly showing early and promising results. In Argentina, a new generation of responsible young digital citizens is being nurtured to prevent online sexual abuse, cyberbullying, and harassment. Young people in El Salvador are learning how to prevent gender-based violence through self-esteem boosting interventions. In Liberia, the national legislature has passed the Domestic Violence Bill, a major step towards addressing violence against women and girls, and more than 170 traditional leaders and female genital mutilation practitioners have publicly declared a suspension of the practice, which is a human rights violation affecting over 200 million women worldwide. Strengthened partnerships with faith-based institutions in Malawi have led to strong commitments from leaders to address the norms that perpetuate violence against women and girls in places of worship and in other spaces. In Mozambique, more young people are providing age-appropriate sexual reproductive health information, counseling and services to their peers through the Spotlight Initiative, supported by the BIS program. And in Uganda, the country's police force is sensitizing local taxi drivers and boda-boda operators on issues of toxic masculinity and the responsibility of men and boys to end violence against women and girls. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, while this progress is very encouraging, much more needs to be done if we are to eliminate all forms of violence against women and girls by 2030, in line with our SDGs. Women and girls should be able to turn to fair and effective institutions to access justice and essential services. Without these, injustice spreads, discrimination persists, and impunity reigns. Women's rights defenders and women in political life are targets of violence in public and private life. We are increasingly seeing a rise in femicide, and even in countries where the overall number of murders is decreasing, the proportion of women being killed is increasing. This detrimental effects of climate change and natural disasters disproportionately affect women and are exacerbating existing gender inequalities. But to all of this, we're also seeing people mobilize as populations take to the street demanding action so that each of us can live a life free of fear. To confront these and other challenges across the globe, next year the Spotlight Initiative, in partnership with the national governments, will be introducing new country programs for Afghanistan, Belize, Grenada, Guyana, Haiti, Jamaica, Kyrgyzstan, Papua New Guinea, Samoa, Tajikistan, Timor-Leste, Trinidad and Tobago, and Vanuatu. With our expanded global footprint, we can scale up our collective efforts on violence prevention, protection, and a provision of high-quality service, alongside the broader efforts to ensure that women's economic empowerment and participation in all aspects of society really happens. Friends, colleagues, I'd like to take this moment to recognize Spotlight Initiative's greatest champion, without whom none of this progress would have been possible. My friend and brother of another mother, Commissioner Niva Mimisa. A truly courageous commitment, and that of which he has bucket loads, energy and support for this cause. And you will be truly missed, but I'm sure that wherever you go, you won't leave us behind. We'll still be in your passion and commitment towards making sure this scourge comes to an end. But your example will continue to drive us forward. I'm convinced that we can achieve our goal of eliminating all forms of violence against women and girls by 2030, and in doing so, remove perhaps the greatest obstacle to women's meaningful participation in all of the SDGs. This belief is reinforced by the inspiring young women and girls that I have met in my travels since we initiated the Spotlight Initiative, from Niger to South Sudan and to Afghanistan. And let me pay tribute to the traditional rulers in Niger that I have met that continue to follow up with me and with my team as to when we're bringing more support so that they can reach everyone and leave no one behind. Let us renew our commitment to ensure that no woman dies because she is a woman, and that no woman or girl experiences violence in her lifetime. Let's truly make violence against women in all its forms history. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Secretary General, for those important and inspiring words. Thank you for your leadership in delivering on the promises of the Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is what we call a he for she champion. And in fact, as the DSG said, it is thanks to his steadfast support for gender equality and violence against women that the Spotlight Initiative came to being. Please welcome Neven Mimica, the European Union Commissioner for International Cooperation and Development.
Thank you. Very good afternoon, Excellencies, distinguished participants, dear friends and colleagues. My thanks to my dear friend, Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed, for your opening remarks, for your kind words, and for your personal dedication and visionary commitment to the Spotlight Initiative. Just like you, I am struck by how far we have come since we launched Spotlight Initiative 2 years ago here in New York with a common vision. A vision of a world where no woman or girl should ever be a victim to any form of violence, where human rights and gender equality are cherished and protected everywhere, and where every single girl and woman has a voice and a choice. Since then, we have taken on all forms of gender-based violence, from femicide and domestic violence to sexual violence and harmful practices. We are spearheading a truly global movement under a unique model of partnership between the European Union and the United Nations, with regional programs and targeted investments in a number of countries. We are joining forces with partner governments and civil society so that all our actions mutually back each other up. I'm grateful for the strong presence of country leaders in this room, for their strong leadership and ownership of this initiative. So far, 13 countries in Latin America and Africa have already started implementing Spotlight programs. And 320 million euros out of our initial investment of 500 million have already been allocated. That is a lot of zeros. But as I said when we first launched Spotlight, the only zero that really matters is that of zero tolerance against gender-based violence. And we will not stop until we reach that. From supporting survivors through counseling and medical services, to teaching young boys and girls about sexual abuse online, to helping design better laws and policies, Spotlight takes many shapes. And it has many faces. I have been deeply touched by the people I have met over the course of these past 2 years. From the outset, you have been Spotlight's true driving force, and your determination and courage has blown me away. Some of you are survivors, daring to share your story with the world. Some of you are activists, stepping forward as agents of change. Some of you are decision makers, choosing to make that change a reality. And together, you are a beacon in this collective journey from darkness to light. With all my heart, thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Mimica, for your remarks. And as you heard, the Commissioner will soon be leaving us as the Commission mandate ends. And I would like to take this opportunity to once again thank him for spearheading the Spotlight Initiative and also recognize him as a champion for gender equality. Please join me in giving him a round of applause once again. We all know that strong political will at the highest level is important in order to have transformative impact and bring about lasting change. Thank you very much, Commissioner Mimica. Thank you. I'd now like to invite Mr. Ville Skinnari, Minister for Development Cooperation and Foreign Trade of Finland, which is currently holding the presidency of the European Union Council, to give his remarks. Mr. Skinnari.
Honorably UN Secretary, Deputy Secretary General, High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, the EU Commissioner for International Cooperation and Development, Honourable Heads of States, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, UNFPA Executive Director, the champions, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to congratulate the EU, the UN organizations and partner countries for the first results and achievements of the Spotlight Initiative. The Spotlight Initiative has been an important step towards the allocation of additional funding to gender equality, sexual and reproductive health and rights, and on ending violence against women and girls. I would like to comment the personal commitment of Commissioner Mimica. Thank you very much. We appreciate. We're also very pleased to see that gender equality will continue to be a priority in the portfolio of the new Commissioner for International Partnerships. Gender equality and the rights of women and girls are a key priority for Finland's presidency of the Council of the European Union. We also want to strengthen our partnership with Africa. On the national front, we are committed donor to UNFPA and UN Women. We are among the 10 biggest providers of core funding to them. The Spotlight Initiative focuses on eliminating violence against women and girls. Violence against women is unfortunately a severe problem also in my own country, Finland. And the government is working hard to eliminate it. Also, the Parliament of Finland has recently addressed a citizens' initiative to ban female genital mutilation. To celebrate the 100 years of independence strive towards equality, our government established the International Gender Equality Prize in 2017. The aim is to award individuals or organizations that advance gender equality. The EU is committed to the protection and fulfillment of girls' and women's rights and promotes them in all external relations. Because of their gender, women and girls face particularly high risks in emergencies. Sexual violence has become a tool of war in conflicts. We must not forget that boys and men are among the victims as well. The Spotlight Initiative has a particular focus on Africa. The program will support the fight against sexual and gender-based violence and harmful practices and support the fulfillment of sexual and reproductive health and rights. I want to encourage a prompt startup for the Spotlight Initiative in Africa. Your Excellencies, honourable colleagues, as the leading actors in the promotion of gender equality, the EU and the UN can continue, together with partner countries, to strive for the elimination of violence against women and girls, as well as the achievement of SDG 5, gender equality, by 2030. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Skinnari, for your remarks, and thank you to the government of Finland for its commitment and support for the Spotlight Initiative. Now, I'd like to now give the floor to the European Union's High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy and Vice President of the European Commission, who's just joined us. Thank you so much for being with us here today. I know it's a very busy time for you, so thank you for being here. The Spotlight Initiative, of course, was made possible by the strong financial backing of the European Union, which provided an initial funding of 500 million euros to the initiative. Please welcome Madam Federica Mogherini.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and let me first and foremost thank my good friend Amina for having always believed in this project and for having been with us every single step of this amazing and exciting and so important work. And also I would like to thank Commissioner Mimica Neven because he has also believed from actually the day before we started to think of this program. And I feel particularly proud of having a commissioner that is a man spending so much of his political energy and also his budget on this initiative. I think we need this coalition of men and women when it comes to this issue. And I'm proud to see in the room men and women equally represented. And I thank you all for being here and joining us in this important initiative. In these 2 years of Spotlight, we have seen the rise of a global movement of women fighting for their rights and for their place in society. And this has happened all around the world. And it has happened in Africa in particular. We have seen a young girl climbing on the roof of a car to lead a peaceful resolution. We have seen the first gender-balanced government in the continent. And further away from the media spotlight, we have seen women working every single day in their own communities to mend the wounds of a civil war, from Central Africa Republic to Mozambique. Yet, at the same time, violence against women is also on the rise. It is a global trend. No continent is excluded. And this is the starting point for Spotlight. We are all in this together, and there is not a single place on earth where our action is not needed and urgent. We can only tackle it globally, and at the same time with specific solutions in each different context. And this is why it's so important to have this broad ownership that is represented in this room. The good news is that mentalities and mindsets can change, and there is no cultural explanation, no customary law that can justify violence. So at the same time, we need to go deep in our societies, knowing that, yes, change is possible. I believe that Spotlight is for all of us, for all women and men. It's for all those who want to eradicate violence against women, gender violence, and make our societies everywhere better places. It is about respect, it is about human rights, and it is also about peace and security, because a society cannot be defined peaceful or secure if it is not peaceful and secure for all. So we need, I believe, a broad coalition to do this, and I'm proud, and this is definitely one of the positive stories, the good stories we have this week. I'm proud that we are here today in so many, with men and boys on board as well. We need the schools, we need the local institutions, we need the private sector, we need the business community, we need each and every citizen of our societies, I would say, so that change can take deep roots in every community. And together, I believe, men and women, we can change our culture, because we need to change our culture, that's the bottom line, and reverse the dangerous trend of these years. Let me add that I think that political leaders also have a responsibility in that, showing correct behaviors and correct narratives, and showing respect. I believe that together we can make it, and again, with a collective work that we all share together, I believe this is something on which a few years from now, a few decades from now, hopefully not so far away, with a collective work, we can come together and celebrate a society that is free from gender violence. Thank you.
High Representative Mogherini, thank you very much for your statement, and thank you for championing this important initiative. Change is indeed possible if we all work together. Thank you so much. As the High Representative said, the Spotlight Initiative is applied to many regions around the world in many countries, focusing on ending all forms of violence, including femicide in Latin America, female genital mutilation in Africa, and female trafficking and labor exploitation in Asia. I'd now like to invite the heads of state and government representatives of Spotlight-focused countries to deliver their remarks. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the President of the Republic of Niger, His Excellency Mamadou Issoufou.
Merci. Merci.
Thank you, Madam Prime Minister of Jamaica, Madam Amina Mohamed, Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Madam Federica Mogherini, High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs, and Deputy European Union Commissioner. I welcome this meeting, the main aim of which is to contribute to eliminating all forms of violence against women and girls by 2030, and this in accordance with the Sustainable Development Goals. I very much appreciate the Spotlight Initiative, which goes hand in hand with the ambition of the government of Niger to fight these degrading practices of which we are all aware. Niger is convinced of the overriding need to reverse the negative trends that are pulling us downwards. The inequality index that was already high is exposing the country to serious threats. Also, women's empowerment, and we need to strengthen that and their position in decision-making positions. The elimination of gender-based violence is very important. This has always been at the heart of our concerns. We are committed to put an end to early marriage, which has the consequence in particular of early pregnancy, obstetric fistula, death in childbirth, high child mortality, and children abandoning school. In the face of these challenges, Niger has several policies and strategies in the area of gender, the empowerment of women and girls, and fighting gender-based violence, and to promote health and education, particularly of young girls. Amongst them, we have the Strategy for Sustainable Development and Inclusive Growth in Niger by 2035, the Economic and Social Development Plan, the National Prevention Strategy and Responding to Gender-Based Violence in Niger, the National Economic Empowerment Strategy for Women, the National Strategy for the Eradication of Obstetric Fistula, the Strategic Plan to put an end to child marriage, and a decree providing protection to young girls in school to the age of 16 years. To this, we would add the projects and programs, the aim of which is to speed up our goals to fight violence, gender-based violence, and to empower women and girls. These policies and strategies can only really be operational if we have a cultural rebirth. And a key aspect of this program is the rebirth of Niger. Three kinds of modernization in our country: social modernization, political modernization, and economic modernization. The social modernization, amongst other things, aims to remove these devastating behaviors which are breaking the development of Niger in general, and women in particular. Women make up half the population. So how can we reduce the economic dependence of our country if we continue to consider them as being minors throughout their lives? How can a country develop without half of its workforce? The fight against gender-based violence is therefore a requirement for economic and social development. The same thing applies to freeing women from domestic chores, fetching water and wood, for example, which are other forms of violence to which they are subjected. Women must be able to benefit from basic social services. They must have access to water, education, and health. In Niger, we see a high level of school enrollment for girls, a drop in fertility from 7.6 children per woman in 2016 to 6 in 2017. And there has been significant progress as well in a drop in infantile mortality and maternal mortality. And with regard to both these things, we must continue to stress prevention, particularly vaccination. And allow me to take this opportunity to encourage the technical partners in vaccination in their efforts to come up with vaccines against diseases such as malaria, which is creating so much destruction amongst women and girls, and also cancer, particularly gynecological cancers, and diabetes. These are the main causes for maternal and child mortality in our country, particularly in Niger. And I also issue a call for to mobilize countries to reconstitute the vaccination fund for the period 2021-2025. With regard to child marriage, several community initiatives have made it possible to reduce this in Niger through promoting the commitment of women and men and traditional and religious leaders who have raised awareness of this issue. Ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to the implementation of the Spotlight Initiative in Niger, the following things have been done. First of all, we have revised our program document to take into account progress made and to adapt this to the socio-cultural context of the country. This document is also accompanied by a rigorous follow-up and evaluation mechanism of government structures. We've also prepared a biannual working plan, 2019-2020, for the government bodies, and we have targeted the initial communities for intervention. And the Spotlight Initiative in Niger has been following a methodology of participation, which has included all stakeholders at all phases. There have also been workshops held in various areas in order to share the initiative and to identify the villages and areas that would benefit according to specific regional criteria. The implementation of this initiative will strengthen the participation of everyone in order to put an end to violence against women and girls in Niger and to create the conditions for the participation of women at all levels of social, political, and economic activity in the country. And I'd like to conclude by once again thanking the European Union. I'm sure we're going to be missing Madame Mogherini. We've done excellent work during your mandate at the head of the European Commission, and I'd also like to thank Madame Amina Mohammed from the United Nations as well as the World Bank for your support in the fight that we are leading to eliminate this violence against women. Thank you for your kind attention.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président, pour votre
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
pays africain.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for your support. Niger is one of the African countries that particularly benefits from the Spotlight Initiative. Thank you for everything that you're doing for women's rights in your country.
Is the Prime Minister of Jamaica, His Excellency Michael Holness. Jamaica, as DSG said, will be one of the countries that will be soon benefiting from the Spotlight Initiative. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Assistant Secretary General Mohammed, Madam Mogherini, and Commissioner Mimiska. Mr. President, I join others in commending the European Union for partnering in support of action to empower women and girls. The Spotlight Initiative has provided impetus for global action to end gender-based violence. The EU's substantial financial allocation to that initiative is evidence of its unquestionable commitment to that goal. This multilateral partnership forged between the EU, the UN, and beneficiary countries for implementation of the Spotlight Initiative is an excellent model for advocacy on issues of global concern. Gender-based violence, manifested in violence against women and girls, is an issue we all grapple with within our societies. In Jamaica, we are no exception. So tackling this issue is of highest priority for my government. The abuse of and persistent acts of violence against women and girls perpetuate a dysfunctional cycle of societal violence, hinders the economic and social empowerment of women and girls in their daily lives, and slows the attainment of Goal 5 of the Sustainable Development Goals. They must be addressed with urgency. The Spotlight Initiative is therefore a most timely and commendable one, which will undoubtedly improve the lives of not only women and girls, but entire communities. We therefore look forward to the finalization and implementation of Jamaica's national program. The €8 million which has been allocated to Jamaica is well needed to support the work we are already doing and will enable us to do much more. We have been taking a strategic and collaborative approach to the issue of gender-based violence, and we are working assiduously with local and international partners to prevent and respond to acts of violence against women and girls. Some steps taken include the implementation of the National Strategic Action Plan to eliminate gender-based violence in Jamaica from 2017 to 2027, including the launch of the first public campaign titled No Excuse for Abuse. We are amending 4 key laws in our country in order to better protect women and girls from violence. Along with UN Women, we are building out an island-wide social media campaign to increase the protection of women and girls. At the same time, we are engaging men and boys as key partners in the ongoing program to provide empowerment. We are also building out an online platform aimed at raising awareness on the issue of gender-based violence, while also providing a safe space for survivors to share their experience and seek support. This year, we've made a significant budgetary allocation for the construction of 2 nationally owned and operated shelters for abused women and their children. As global partners, we have taken action and made some progress. There is still more work to be done. Continued attacks on our women and girls are a reminder that we cannot be complacent. We cannot overemphasize the importance of continued partnership and collaboration to make this world a safe place for every woman and every girl. Tackling this challenge requires everyone's participation. Once again, allow me to express our deep appreciation to the EU and the United Nations for their support as we work towards achieving this important goal of ending violence against our women and girls. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Prime Minister Michael Holness, for your remarks. And thank you to the President of Niger, who I believe is going to be leaving us now. Thank you for taking the time to be with us here today. Now, if I can kindly ask our next speakers, in the interest of time, to keep their statements to 3 minutes, if you can, because we have a lot of people, obviously, who are going to be giving remarks. So I'll now give the floor to the Foreign Minister of Argentina, Jorge Fori, who is here with us today.
Prometo ser breve.
I promise to be brief. First of all, I would like to greet the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Amina Mohammed, of course, Commissioner Mimica, and the Prime Minister of Jamaica, who is still with us, and who is a great friend from our region. I'm very happy to be able to participate in the Spotlight Initiative. It has been developed to a great degree in Argentina as well, and I congratulate both the United Nations and the European Union for this association, as well as the commitment to take this fight against violence against women and girls into hand. We believe that only international commitment and everybody's commitment will help us to change the conditions under which this violence takes place. The Sustainable Development Agenda and the Spotlight Initiative coincide with our 2030 agenda. One of the facets is fighting against femicide, one of the most extreme forms of violence against women. Not only does it violate the rights, it also limits the possibilities of development and well-being of an entire society. In Argentina, gender policy is state policy, and we are particularly focusing on femicide. There are many cases in our country, and we must fight against this trend, not only with control, but also with education. There is a strong political will to have projects in order to commit to this eradication of violence. And we have funding which is coming in partly through the Spotlight Initiative, which provides technical and financial support to strengthen the measures the government of Argentina is taking to reduce the number of femicides. In Argentina, this Spotlight Initiative is supported by UN Women, the UNDP, the UNFPA, the IOL, and also there have been strong commitments from non-governmental organizations and women's organizations. And this initiative is not only national in scope, it also extends to the provinces of Argentina, and it is already being developed in the provinces of Buenos Aires, Salta, and Jujuy. Femicide is a worldwide scourge which goes beyond borders and levels of development. And with this Spotlight, we can continue to implement projects, not only to focus on this ill, but also to orient education, thus contribute to Sustainable Development Goal 5, which is gender equality. Thank you very much, and I was as brief as I could.
You kept to the time. Thank you so much, Foreign Minister from Argentina. Our next speaker is the Minister of Gender, Children and Social Protection for Liberia, Williametta Piso Saidi Tar. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Madam Amina Mohamed, Mr. Monitor, all the members of EU and UN representatives here, allow me, as we say in my country, to stand on existing protocols. I bring you greetings from my president, Dr. George Manuel Weah, and I would like to extend our own appreciation to the European Union and the UN for including us in the 8 countries in Africa to benefit from the EU Spotlight Initiative. In a very short period, the Spotlight Initiative has increased visibility and advocacy to end violence in Liberia. It has focused on how to positively impact the lives of women, girls, and discriminated groups in Africa, especially for us in our country, Liberia. I'm delighted to participate and provide a quick update today on how the initiative is helping to eliminate violence against women and girls, who are upward of 50% of our population in Liberia. On the 18th of June this year, our president designated our vice president, Her Excellency Joel Howard Taylor, to launch our Spotlight Initiative in Sieni District in Grand Cape Ann County, one of the 5 counties selected for the initiative. In fact, 5 Spotlight counties account for 75% of the population and will directly benefit over 600,000 men, women, boys, and girls. On progress, it is my great pleasure to inform you that we have recently done 2 major achievements. Madam Mohamed said it well. On the 25th of June, we're able to have a major landmark policy statement made by our traditional leaders on the temporary suspension of Sunday schools in Liberia. And this was signed in my own presence, the President of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, Civil Society organizations, National Council of Chiefs, Elders, and representatives of the 10 counties in which this practice is being done. The Sani schools is the traditional bush schools for women that human rights organizations and international partners reported on as practicing harmful practices. This one-year period of suspension will be used to conduct an inventory as an intervention towards stemming out traditional practices that are unhealthy for women and girls. After over 5 years of being on the shelf, on the 13th of August this year, President Weah signed into law our Domestic Violence Act of Liberia. The act was successfully passed, though without the clause on female genital mutilation, so as to not hinder other necessary actions in the absence of the act. The issue of FGM requires in-depth consultation and awareness amongst our people if we are to bring sustained change in cultural and social practices. Our traditional leaders especially have to take ownership to ensure the eradication of HTPs is successful. We have an End-FGM working group in place that is presently drafting a separate bill for the government to review, whilst we continue to work with our traditional leaders to see this come to fruition. We acknowledge that these are the very first steps over many hurdles, yet these are first steps to a very important journey that has long been coming. It will now be crucial to ensure that our people understand their rights and are able to exercise it. Therefore, the focus will now be on building awareness on the policy and the act, on effectively implementing them through concrete actions supported by the Spotlight Initiative, amongst others. Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot underscore how important the initiative and fight for elimination of violence is for Liberia. It has helped improve reporting and data collection that will better inform the national prevention and response actions. It has also increased coordination amongst partners to inform policy and plans. Particularly noteworthy is the increasing joint efforts that has been led by me with my country's own Ministries of Justice, Health, Education, in order to shift the focus to early prevention and preparedness rather to only response. A comprehensive prevention strategy has been developed that will integrate into the mandate of the relevant government ministries, and responsibilities will be set to sustain the efforts. More awareness, coordination, and capacity building actions are being done to ensure the support does not end with reporting. Rather, ensure cases are adjudicated, survivors receive urgent care and services, and culprits are held accountable. Partnering with the civil society organizations has been vital for the implementation of the program, given the limited capacity and outreach of the government, because actions require extensive outreach capacities. The civil society organization will deliver over 45% of the program actions, a partnership that is quite unique to the Spotlight Initiative. Implementation these past months has been challenging due to raining seasons that has cut off access to most parts of the country, and because over 70% of the interventions are intended to be done in those counties, we will expedite implementation once the dry season begins. In conclusion, I would like to acknowledge and express my appreciation to the European Union and United Nations. Their unstinted and unwavering support and advocacy to eliminate sexual and gender-based violence has been of great value. We remain indebted. This collaboration between the EU, UN, CSOs, and my government builds on the best practices at national, regional, and global levels. It is underlined by a consultative and inclusive process involving men, women, girls, and boys, especially the marginalized and discriminated segments of our society, to ensure no one is left behind. Our president would like to ensure this body that he is committed to keeping up this momentum and use this joint platform of the Spotlight Initiative to continue his own advocacy for the drafting and passage of the FGM bill. We remain committed to championing this fight to end harmful practices and all forms of violence against women and girls. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister, for your statement. Thank you. Thank you very much. Once again, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in the interest of time, please try to keep your statements to about 3 minutes. It would be greatly appreciated. Up next is the Foreign Minister of El Salvador, Her Excellency Alexandra Hill.
Thank you very much. Señora Secretaria General.
Madam Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Amina Mohammed. High Commissioner of the European Union, Federica Mogherini. Excellencies, dear friends. As a public official, as a Salvadoran, and above all, as a woman and the mother of a daughter, I would like to live in a world where this kind of meeting was not needed. I'm referring to the fact that equal conditions and the full incorporation of women into the productive processes of the countries linked from gender-based violence should be a fact. It should be a given. It's the 21st century. We are convinced that all of you share this feeling with me, which leads us to condemn and point out gender violence and even more femicides, which are abominable. We must be categorical when it comes to rejecting in our societies and in all countries of the world that these are despicable, intolerable, and completely unacceptable actions. I am consoled that I am not alone in this feeling and that El Salvador is not fighting these stereotypes assigned by archaic cultural attitudes and standards which are discriminatory. This is a painful reality which is really wounding. I am happy that we are moving forward in attaining the Sustainable Development Goals, especially the fifth, which is achieving gender equity and empowering all women, girls, and girl children. And I refer to all of my country's efforts. We will not rest until all women, all youth, and all girls have the same equality of rights. This is a premise of not leaving anybody behind. For the first time, El Salvador has a balanced government with an equal number of men and women in ministerial positions. I should also indicate that the government of President Bukele includes amongst the focuses of work in the Cuscatlán Plan a multiplicity of actions benefiting comprehensive gender equity and zero tolerance of the violation of the fundamental rights of our women. Amongst these actions going towards this goal is watching over the right to women of women to a life free of all forms of violence. This commitment is stronger than ever now that the president has had his first girl, little Laila, who you must have seen during this event. Because of Laila, a baby who has just been born, and all of our women, we must act tenaciously with responsibility and with a lifelong commitment. This is personal. We cannot let ourselves down. It is unthinkable to go backwards. There's no time for inaction. We need changes, deep, far-reaching changes, and we need them now. Because of all that I have just mentioned, I believe that initiatives like the Spotlight are key to push forward actions which will make it possible to get rid of the barriers which prevent us women and our daughters from fully enjoying our rights. El Salvador has been chosen as one of the 5 Latin American countries to be considered to counteract cases of violence against women. Simply reflects our commitment to change this reality. We also are confident that the Spotlight initiative, which is in accordance with our Cuscatlán Plan, will help us strengthen our legal frameworks, our institutional capacity, and make it possible for us to continue having the technical assistance we need so that we can realize and implement the policies that we have set ourselves for women. I wish to thank the European Union and the United Nations for considering us for this effort, and you can rest assured that we take it with full responsibility from our head of government, Najib Bukele. The government, young people, men, women, our organized civil society and the private sector, all of us are called to work with will, with tenacity, with determination, and once again with zero tolerance to put an end to violence against women and girls in the world. It is only together that we can achieve this. Thank you very much, and may God give us the strength to go on.
Yes. Thank you very much for those powerful words. Before I introduce our next speaker, I'd like to thank the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, who needs to leave us now because she has other engagements, for being with us here today. Thank you very much, DSG, for being here. Thank you for championing this very important initiative. Thank you. And I would like to, before we continue, I'd like to invite the civil society representatives and activists from Spotlight countries, as well as the head of institutions, who will be taking part in our interactive discussion in just a few minutes, to take to the stage now. And we look forward, of course, to a very interesting discussion in just a few minutes. We'll continue with the statements from the heads of governments who are here with us, and I will once again ask you to please keep your statements short, as we have quite a few to go through this evening. I'd now like to give the floor to the African Union Commissioner for Social Affairs, Her Excellency Amira El Fadi.
Thank you very much. I would like to start by thanking the Deputy Secretary General, Amina Mohammed, and the EU Commissioner, Mr. Nevin Mimika, and Sister Natalia, UNEP Executive Secretary. The African Union Commission has manifested the political will of its heads of states and government in agreeing on having clear policies on stopping and fighting and combating gender-based violence in Africa. And to do so, we have many projects and programs that reflects what we are doing in Africa with our member states, with our ex, and it's always with partnership with the UN agencies. I can say that the spotlight is coming in to support what Africa is doing, and to give us the opportunity to accelerate our project, whether on ending child marriage in Africa, the campaign of ending child marriage, which started in 2014, which we decided in the last summit that it has to be extended for another 5 years till 2025. We will have a strategic action plan to end child marriage in Africa. It will concentrate more on the dimension of the social norm and the traditional practice in the continent, and we are trying to bring everybody on board. Also, we have started the initiative on Salima campaign for eliminating female genital mutilation in Africa, and also we have a summit decision on this, and we have a champion, which is the president of Burkina Faso. He's our African champion for eliminating of female genital mutilation in Africa. These are just examples of our projects, but I can say that the document, the Spotlight document for Africa is almost done, work in process. We are working with the relevant UN agencies to finalize the document, and we are planning to launch our African document on the sidelines of our upcoming summit, which is going to be in February 2020. But we are very much appreciating the work of the United Nations. We are very much appreciating the support of the African Union as one of our strategic partners, the European Union as one of the strategic partners of the African Union. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you, Amira Al Fadi, for your statement. I'd like to thank our champions for their patience. We'll be coming to you very shortly. We just have one last statement from the minister from Malawi, who has just joined us just a short while ago, the Minister of Gender, Children and Disabilities and Social Welfare of Malawi, Mary Navicha. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Director of Ceremonies. Your Excellency Amina Mohammed, Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations. Excellencies, all protocols observed. It is a great pleasure and honor for me to be part of this high-level event, reflecting on the progress and perspectives of the Spotlight Initiative, which is significantly contributing towards our nation's efforts to eliminate violence against women and girls in our country. Excellencies, you will agree with me that gender-based violence is one of the most widespread and devastating human rights violations globally. Malawi, just like many other developing countries, continue to experience increased episodes of gender-based violence. As such, Malawi has undertaken several upstream initiatives to address this problem. However, more resources are needed to roll up and reach out to the whole population. I am therefore grateful to the European Union for the consideration as Malawi, one of the African countries that are benefiting from this Spotlight initiative. Since the initiative was rolled out, significant progress has been registered in establishing a film base for program delivery through strategic participatory planning and partnership building. Some participating districts have already started to experience the positive impact of the initiative. Excellencies, one important lesson which should be taken into consideration is the engagement of the communities to be part of the solution. In areas where communities have been engaged and helped to build their capacity, episodes of child marriages and gender-based violence have significantly been reduced. The communities are faithfully reporting all cases of abuse and ensuring that justice is prevailing. We have also learned that where more resources are invested to downstream activities, more and more women and children stand to benefit and the project become more effective. In this regard, I wish to appeal to all United Nations agencies that are entrusted with Spotlight funds to prioritize community-based interventions and focus less on hiring experts and consultancies that most often drain and our limited resources with minimal impact. Our only concern with the initiative is that the fact it is only targeting one corner of our country, like 6 districts out of 28. And I'm looking at the potential of the initiative. I wished it covered the whole country, or at least half of the population. To our United Nations agencies, please embark the building capacity of our district councils so that they are funded directly rather than using direct payment, which will obviously slow down implementation of this beautiful initiative. As I conclude, let me once again express my gratitude to EU for supporting us in our efforts towards eliminating violence against women and girls. Malawi remains committed to eliminate violence against women and girls, to ensure that no one is left behind. I thank you for your attention and may God bless you all.
Thank you very much, Minister Navicha, for your remarks, and thank you for telling us about the needs on the ground in Malawi. I'm sure your message has been heard today. Thank you very much. Now, we've just heard from leaders of Spotlight countries about how serious the issue of violence against women and girls is and what needs to be done to tackle it. Well, tackling violence against women and girls is also very much about changing the mindsets and shifting the underlying social norms that perpetuate violence against women and girls. And we're fortunate to have a Spotlight champions who use their voice and platform to help change the negative social norms that perpetuate violence against women and girls. These are people who use their name and fame to bring attention, to shine a spotlight on violence against women. And we're lucky to have 3 Spotlight champions with us today. First up, our first champion is Miss Emma Bonino, who's been at the forefront of the fight to eradicate female genital mutilation. Please welcome the Italian Senator Emma Bonino, founder of the international non-governmental organization No Peace, No Justice.
Friends, ladies and gentlemen, like everybody else, I had prepared a speech. But after 1 hour and a half listening to all of you, I've decided to change. At the frustration of the people who helped preparing, I apologize, but I think now is the time to give maybe another message. Listening to all of you in this room, I have the feeling to preaching to the converted. The fact is that outside this room and back home, the situation is quite different, be it in Europe, be it in Africa, or everywhere. So it's important to gather, but to keep in mind that then implementing back home the empowerment of women is not an easy task. That is what we have to face, and I agree with the one who said that we need a cultural change. That's okay. We need, but I've been asked to speak because I've been in my long life, I'm very old, minister or commissioner or activist or what have you. And always with human rights. But I see my friends there. We know each other since 30 years. But in any case, what I do know is that with all the responsibility of activists, local community, one thing I want to say to government, with power comes responsibility. So the cultural change is much more on your shoulder than on the simple activist in the street. Please remember that. Please remember. When I was young and I finished, there was a huge debate, even in this room, if we should call it female genital mutilation or something not so violent. And we started fighting to call the name a name. It's female genital mutilation. And in this room 20 years ago, it was even difficult to pronounce the full name, right? Oh, so change can come. But somebody has to give the example and take responsibility. And that is government, institution, but particularly government when they go back home at national level. It's very good to have a global initiative. Commissioner, we appreciate, we thank you very much, but that doesn't take away the responsibility of national change that relies on your shoulder. Finally, yes, it's a global issue, violence against women, but it has also national way of implementation, national priority, national need. So please, with this Spotlight initiative, be flexible. Listen to the people. Listen to the state and the community. Don't have a simple scheme applying for everybody. That is not true. And I think also that working side by side with No Peace Without Justice and Girls Not Brides campaign, you will realize how difficult people, how different countries are, and how different approach you have to take. Thank you very much.
Very much, Emma Bonino, for that very powerful message. Governments have a responsibility, she says, and I hope that the government leaders who are here with us today have heard her message. And also, of course, a one-for-all scheme doesn't work. So thank you very much for that powerful message. Up next, our next speaker is a survivor of female genital mutilation, and today a women's rights activist. Through her tireless grassroots campaigning across her native Gambia, she was instrumental in the Gambian government's decision to ban female genital mutilation. Please welcome Jaha Doucouré, our Spotlight champion.
Thank you so much, Folly. So I'm here today to talk about what progress looks like. And to me, progress looks like when we no longer refer to victims of violence as just survivors, but champions of change. Mama Fumzile, I want to say that You've turned someone who has experienced violence to not only a survivor, but a leader. And I'll always be grateful to you for this opportunity. Progress is when we accept that change is possible and change is coming. And it's coming because women like me are leading that change in our communities, and that we are not importing solutions into communities. What I want to say to the world leaders that are in this room, next time when you come to an event like this, don't just bring a speech, bring a plan. Ending violence against women and girls is crucial in increasing the human capital. That means making education for girls a right, not just a privilege in our countries. Our contribution and action in ending violence against women, meaning survivors, is not just something that's needed, but is necessary if we truly want change. There are millions of Jahas out there. We just have to find them. And we need to give them back the power that they realize. As someone who has been through FGM when I was 1 week old, and I was subjected to child marriage at the age of 15, girls like me don't make it this far. We're talked about, we are talked at, but we are never part of the decision making. To me, UN Women has given me that chance to not only be part of the decision making, but the reason why Gambia passed a law against FGM and child marriage is not because policymakers were there talking, but it was young people took to the streets, and young people demanded that change. And Commissioner Mimesha, I have to say that I am sad that you're leaving, because ever since the Spotlight Initiative started, you have supported me and you have believed in me. And I owe a lot of my success because I have people that truly believe in me and want to see me succeed. And we need more of that. We need more male champions. So I want to say thank you to your service, not only to the EU, but to humanity as a whole. We will miss you, and we hope whoever replaces you is just like you in some ways. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your courage. Thank you for telling your story to the world and for speaking up and speaking out against violence against women and children. And it's true that young voices like yours are needed if indeed we are to make meaningful change. So thank you very much for sharing your experience with the world. Cecilia Suarez. Everyone knows her name and face in Latin America. She's an Emmy Award-nominated actress and Spotlight Initiative champion from Mexico, who's been raising awareness on violence against women to over 1 million people on her social media platforms. Please welcome Cecilia to the podium.
Hola.
Hello. Well, I'm not going to be like my predecessors. I have brought a speech with me, and I hope it'll be brief and that you won't be bored. Let's just take a pause and think about feeling. That's what Svetlana Zalevich said. She'd always been marginalized because she didn't... but we're something other than sentient beings, she said. We're men and women that live feeling and acting and thinking, feeling and being. Women and girls of all ages throughout the world, we have learnt to feel historically a constant violence exercised against us in language, in ideas, in attitudes, and in silence. The speeches, what people say in public, education, artistic messages, and also in the way in which we live in our families, our own families. So much so that we have just internalized this humiliation when we've been violated and hit, abused in summary, when we have been disappeared. Years and years of history and places have led to the same attitude of systematic and complex aggression, where I ask myself over and over, where does this emotional impulse come from to hurt people and be violent towards a woman, your wife, your ex-wife, your neighbor, or against a girl? What emotional universe hosts people that abuse people, violate people, or kill people? What should we feel, women? Should we forgive? What do we hope for? Well, when it comes to our feelings that I referred to just now, it's not just an issue of the figures. We're talking about an emotional wound that's open in every woman and girl who's suffered violence. That wound is the one that today is darkening the world, the whole world, casting a shadow. In Mexico, my country, the social fabric is broken down. 19.1 million women, 64% of them have faced severe violence to extreme violence from their partner or husband. What do these numbers reveal? Well, in principle and paradoxically, it's in the supposed situation of love where we run the most danger. Why? Where does that hatred come from? I think it's also the time to refer to emotions and the broken feelings that have led us to live like this, and we've given our children a broken world. Feelings are also reality. And how will we be able to understand the magnitude of these circumstances unless we connect our minds with our hearts? Because although it's girls and women that are particularly affected by this, men as well are trapped in the same emotional slavery. Their role of being henchmen, of destroying is what it is. Abusing women, it's not possible to make progress without men. So I hope that Spotlight will progress and also recognize this human suffering. Linking with the heart, we can understand the depth of what's being expressed by this violence, and perhaps find other words, other ideas, and other emotions that will lead to the fundamental reconciliation that makes life possible, because we cannot, we should not, and above all, we do not want to continue living this way. Thank you.
Cecilia, thank you so much for your words. Thank you to all of our champions for their commitment and their dedication. Thank you for all that you do every day to help end violence against women and girls. I'd like to acknowledge the Executive Director of UNFPA, Natalia Kanem. Thank you so much for being with us. Before we get to you, we're going to get to our interactive discussion, and I'd like to invite the panelists to join us on stage. Dr. Patrice Gomez, Secretary General of the African, Caribbean, and Pacific Group of States. Dr. Ala Murabit is the representative of the Global Civil Society Reference Group of the Spotlight Initiative. She's also one of the SDG advocates appointed by the UN Secretary General. With us also is Novelita Palisco, President of the Domestic Workers Union in the Philippines. From Argentina, we have Gladys Villalba, coordinator of the Argentinian Human Rights and Gender NGO, Razanor. Ann-Birgit Albrechtsen is CEO of Plan International. And also with us, Her Royal Highness Mabel von Oranje, founder and CEO of Girls Not Brides, a global network fighting child marriage worldwide. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for your patience. So now this is the part where we don't read statements. Good, right? We're going to have a very interesting dialogue, a very interesting conversation about what's been achieved through the Spotlight Initiative and what needs to be done still. So we're really looking forward to hearing your expertise, your insight, what you've seen on the ground, and not a speech, please, okay? All right. Patrick Gomez, if I can start with you.
Yes, well, thanks so much, my dear.
Let me ask you a question. Don't read a statement. Let me just ask you, as you know, the Secretariat, ACP represents some of the countries most affected by gender inequality. What actions do you think this initiative, Spotlight Initiative, needs to prioritize, and what role can the ACP play?
In our view, in the African Caribbean Pacific Group, we put great emphasis on decision-making. And that means we have to find ways and avenues by which the initiative finds opportunities and rooms for women to make the decisions about their own lives, particularly about the sexual and reproductive rights. That cannot be denied. We also say that ending violence means empowerment. Empowerment has to be political, it has to be economic, and it has to be cultural and social. For us in the ACP, we're doing some of that empowerment in our small and medium enterprise programs. We're doing it in the Pacific in a great way in terms of where we relate to fishing and fisheries. We also see that it's necessary that the cultural talent, the genuity, the talent, the creative capacity of women is being brought to the fore in film, in drama and art, and in music. So I think we're trying to see how we bring these together so that the power of women are seen at all different levels, political, economic, social, and cultural.
What do you see as the key area, the area of priority that Spotlight should be focusing on, depending on the region, of course? What do you think should be the number one
Three areas
priority?
we could deal with. End the trafficking in women. The trafficking is terribly related to migration, the prostitution, exploitation. Crude has to be ended. Okay. It's abusive of women and the dignity of the woman. Right. Secondly, I think we have to find ways and means by which there must be access to finances. They want to run their own business. And when they do their business, it's always successful, far more successful than many men. But I think we have to be also, at a third level, making sure that the cultural talent, that's why we put emphasis on a Culture Plus program. There's such creativity there that could be expanded upon.
All right.
Thank you.
Let me bring in Ala Mourabit now. Ala, one of the objectives of Spotlight is to engage, of course, traditional but also religious leaders. And you focus specifically on the use of Islamic texts in your advocacy. So tell us how this helps your organization to promote women's rights, the role of religion.
So I think what's incredibly important is recognizing that oftentimes when we talk about the abuse of women and girls, and when we talk about women's rights and leadership, what we really are talking about is power. And in order for us to really begin to address at a foundational level why women do not have power and why these abuses are perpetuated and why they continue, and why they are not only culturally normal, but in many countries they are part of the law, is recognizing how those came about in the first place. And in many parts of the world, in many countries around the world, including this one, a huge barrier to women's inclusion, leadership, safety, and security is the manipulation, misuse, and misrepresentation of faith. That is something we've seen across all faiths, and we see it around the world. And it defines, I think, a huge part of this challenge, because for so many decades, and I mean, not just this past week, not the past 4 years that we've been talking about the Sustainable Development Goals, not the past decades that we've been talking about women's rights and inclusion, but genuinely, since this conversation started, there has been a room where decisions are made by religious leaders where women have often been exempt. And when we have approached engaging religious leaders, we've been told we're strengthening religious leaders. We're strengthening their voice, we're strengthening their power, which I always found a little humorous because I do not think women's rights activists have the ability to give power to those who hold it most in that community. Religious leaders are the ones in most of the world, religious actors, I should say, who tend to hold power. And it becomes incredibly important to not only invite them into the room and have conversations with them, but actually ensure that we're talking about women's leadership within faith as well. If we're very serious about the inclusion and leadership of women and the safety and security of women, we need to start talking about it less as us being subjects of the issue and more as us being the ones who get to change the issue. And religion is not exempt. I mean, if we look at the greatest land ownership, if we look at the greatest financial ownership, if we look at the most incredible impact on policy around the world, we can root it down in most of this world to religious leadership and a history of religious power and institutionalized religious power. And until we actively start talking about faith, not just culture, but faith and faith actors as part and parcel of the problem and the solution, I don't think we're going to be able to address
how
this.
then do you bring in those faith actors? How do you convince them?
I think, you know, it would be incredibly unfair to generalize and say every faith actor is in it for their own gain. I think that would be incredibly unfair. In the same way we have politicians that you can approach and address that can come up with things like, that can commit to things like the Spotlight Initiative, you have faith actors that are incredibly prepared and advocate for the inclusion and leadership of women. And I think what we need to do is both create the space for us to have those conversations with those faith actors, but also ensure that those faith actors are leveraging their own agency to reach out to others in their community. What we did with the Voice of Libyan Women in Libya was work with faith actors to go into communities where women's rights activists would have been excluded and or abused in. And so I think when we're talking about collaboration, we often talk about member state collaboration, we talk about the EU and the UN, we talk about civil society, we often don't talk about the fact that particularly in conflict and post-conflict countries, religion becomes incredibly important. Indeed. Religious institutions become incredibly important, religious gathering spaces and religious actors. And if we can approach the ones who have shown that they fundamentally believe in equality and leverage faith to actually convince them that equality is within their text, then I think we can go far.
All right, very interesting points there. Thank you, Ala. Thank you very much. Novelita, if I can come to you. In Southeast Asia, Spotlight has focused primarily on ending female trafficking and labor exploitation. So if you can tell us about your experience and the Safe and Fair program that was launched 2 years ago, how has it impacted domestic workers' life in the countries of origin, but also in the countries of destination? Tell us about your experience.
Okay, we were handling cases of domestic workers in the Philippines and also the migrant distress who are able to get the money claims and of course and then rescue in the Middle East countries where their destination countries is. And we are collaborated with the government, of course the Department of Labor and Employment, the Overseas Workers and Welfare Administration, and then of course the Philippine Overseas and Employment Agencies, and of course with the private employment agencies.
Which is more important? Is it targeting domestic workers in the countries of origin or in the countries of destination?
Of course, my focus is, of course, I'm an advocate also of migrant domestic workers because I'm a survivor of trafficked women and experience sexual harassment mostly in the Middle East countries. So I'm focusing mostly on the migrant workers, and of course with the help of the European Union for funding the Spotlight Initiative of Safe and Fair, which bring us together working on labor migration, ending violence and trafficking, including governments, civil society, trade union, and employers. Of course, it's capacitated me to be able to rescue more migrant workers, mostly in the Middle East countries. So the main problem is that the abolishing the kafala system should be done. Yeah,
the sponsorship system in many of these Middle Eastern countries. Right. Thank you so much, Novelita. Thank you. Gladys Villalba, Latin America, of course, is home to 14 of the 25 countries with the world's highest rates of femicide. Give us some examples, if you can, of your everyday work to eliminate violence against women and girls in your country, and what role do you think civil society can play in the fight against femicide in Argentina?
Sí, muy buenas tardes. Yes, a very good afternoon to everybody. I'd like to acknowledge the role of those who made it possible for me to come here today to represent civil society, UN Argentina, and the civil society leaders who work in this space, who are working in a network, and who are playing a major role in Argentina in influencing decision-making. And I'd also like to thank each one of you for being here today and for making it possible for me to be here. It's really a source of pride for civil society, which is working at the grassroots. My name is Gladys Villalba, as I have already been introduced. For over 30 years, I've been working as a feminist and as an abolitionist. I've been working in many organizations for many years, and 20 years ago we created a human rights organization called Razonar. We use this to deal with separate sets of problems together with organizations which create networks to resolve problems and support women and girls who are victims of violence. Since this is a very difficult pathway for each one of these women, we in civil society have come together to support them. When I'm talking about a critical path, it's when that woman or girl who is a victim of any kind of gender-based violence has to report this to a police station or to a prosecutor. She doesn't have the tools to do this because this critical pathway is very difficult, and women are too weak to go and report this violence and break the cycle. That's why we are there supporting them.
What sort of challenges does a civil society organization face in dealing with this issue on the ground?
Y los desafíos. The challenges that we face are numerous, beginning with eradicating violence, not just gender-based violence, but also femicide. Every day, a woman dies at the hands of a man in Argentina. She's killed by the machista culture that we have to deconstruct. I've come to tell you today that femicides have a face. They have a body. These women had dreams. These are 4 different women with 4 different stories. They all fell victim to femicide. These women and girls, because one of them is a girl, Serena, 15 years old, who was killed with 49 stab wounds by her boyfriend. We have Natalia too, Natalia Rocha, a young woman who was kidnapped. She was abducted, she was drugged, she was raped, and killed with blunt blows by 4 criminals. We have another young girl, Belen. She was killed by a hired killer who was sent by a criminal who is in prison. Even though he is in prison, he can issue orders to have a woman killed. And lastly, we have Diana Barrio Nuevo, a young mother with 3 children. The youngest one is named Brisa. Because of Brisa, we have a law today in Argentina, and here we can show how civil society affects public policy. This was a civil society initiative to provide economic reparations to the victims of collateral damage. This is the case of boys and girls who are orphans because their mother was killed by their father, who is detained. So this is a law which produces economic assistance to children until they reach 21 years of age. As I was saying, the victims of femicide have faces. Let's not forget them. Because of Spotlight and this alliance that we've forged in civil society, we see how light is being shed on all this. We start having hope because civil society organizations, both in Argentina and all of Latin America, we agree on that. We are working from the grassroots with nothing, with a sense of sisterhood, with a sense of creativity. Because if we, civil society organizations, were not creative, we wouldn't even be here today. We work with no resources. We do whatever we can to help the victims of violence and their families. In many cases, such as the cases of these victims, the lawyers working in social organizations like our lawyers, Kania Corral, Maya Rosa Avila, are working for free, sponsoring families. This is the only way of getting justice to be done. It's a lot of work and effort, and that's why I would like to tell those who are leading Spotlight, the European Union and the UN. I'm grateful that we are here, but let's not forget this. It has to be systematic. It has to be over the longer term. It's a responsibility of every one of you and also ours to eradicate gender violence, especially femicides.
Has a role to play. Gracias. Thank you so much for telling us about these women and indeed for the hard work that you do on the ground. And as you say, each one of us has a role to play. Let me now bring in Anne-Birgit Albrechtsson, CEO of PLAN International. Please tell us the role that PLAN and other international NGOs play in achieving equal power for women and girls, and what has violence got to do with it?
Thanks for that question, and it builds on Ala's point around power. PLAN International works in thousands of communities around the world with young activists and young girls way before they become activists. And they often tell us that they want to lead. They want to lead change. They want to be part of the movement that is driving violence into the past. But it's violence itself that prevents them from moving forward. It's the violence in the language that prevents them from, that laughs at them when they speak up. When they take the floor and or put up their hand in the classroom and they're told that they're not worthy. It's the physical violence at home when their parents discovered that they had spoken up about something that they shouldn't have. And of course, it's the rape and it's the abuse that happens in public spaces when they try and leave their home and go and have a voice. So the agency of girls and adolescents and women is prevented by violence itself. I wanted to also just call out a little bit in terms of how organizations like PLAN International works. It was fantastic to hear from the Minister of Liberia and El Salvador, who we're very proud partners with, and also to sort of connect the dots, because international NGOs are not in this to suck money out from under the local partners. We can help connect the experiences of civil society from country to country. We can be interlocutors between, yes, some decision makers in capital cities and the villages in which we work with our partners. We can also shine a particular light, which is our particular passion, on a part of the community that is often left out. Too often we talk about girls, youth, and women. And we actually don't understand that the adolescent girl, simply because she's an adolescent girl and going through the most life-changing time in her life, have very, very distinct needs, particularly when it comes to preventing violence. She is not just a little woman, or she is not just a girl that's almost grown up. She has very distinct needs. So while I have the floor here, I feel it's my duty to make sure that every single Spotlight initiative looks at that cross-section of age and gender when we design our initiatives. We have been working from day one with the Spotlight initiative at the global, regional, local, national, and local level. We're actually proud of the kind of momentum that's beginning to grow now. Yes, it was slow in the beginning, and yes, we had to get it off the ground, but things are actually beginning to happen. And I really want to make sure that everybody in this room understand that sometimes things take time. You don't actually change norms and standards and values and stereotypes and engage a whole global community around ending violence against women overnight. And so the more that get behind both this Spotlight initiative, the more that go out from this room and come to Nairobi, come and be part of the Beijing process, come and be part of any other processes that put sexual and reproductive health and rights and all the taboo issues on the table and put the girls, particularly the adolescent girl, at the forefront of the conversation,
right,
the better we will be.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that message. Thank you. And last but not least, Her Royal Highness Mabel van Oranje. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing it right. Tell us about your years of campaigning against child marriage worldwide. You've been doing this for a long time. What do you think is the most important cultural change that the global community and the Spotlight initiative has to be working towards?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Dear friends, I'm here today not just to represent Girls Not Brides, which is a partnership of more than 1,300 member organizations in over 100 countries working to end child marriage. I'm here also to represent the girl from Ethiopia who I met. And when I asked her about her wedding day, because she was a child bride, she said to me, my wedding day was the day I had to leave school. I'm here to represent the girl from Zambia who had never heard about sex, but who found herself pregnant at the age of 12 and was therefore forced to leave school and ended up in a child marriage. I'm here to represent the girl from India who told me that the present that her older husband gave her on her wedding night was HIV infection. I'm here to represent the girl from Mozambique who got abused every day, mentally and physically, not just by her husband, but also by her mother-in-law. And I'm here to represent the girl from Ethiopia who I asked, how old were you when you got married? And she looked at me and she said, I don't know. I don't know when I was born. I don't have a birth certificate, but I think I was between 5 and 7 years old when I got married. Now, child marriage deprives girls of their rights, and it's a form of violence that steals the futures of girls. And thanks to Spotlight and thanks to the work of all these Girls Not Brides members, we're getting to understand better and better what needs to be done to stop this form of violence. And I'll very quickly share 3 lessons with you, because I'm a pragmatic girl and all of our members are pragmatic. First of all, we need to make sure that we provide these adolescent girls with integrated services. We don't help them if they're schooling, but then they get pregnant because there are no contraceptives. We don't help them if we help them to understand they have rights and agency, but then they get beaten up. So we need to get much better at working across sectors and making sure that what we deliver to girls is all the programming that they need. Secondly, we need to make sure that we work there where we can make the biggest change, which is at the local level, in the lives of their girls, their families, and their communities. That is where real change happens. And then thirdly, when we do so, we need to, as was being said here on the panel, we need to make sure that we all work together. It's not just governments that can create change. It's not the United Nations on its own. It is not the international NGOs on their own. It's not just the religious leaders or the traditional leaders or the community-based organizations. We all need to work together. And I know that working together isn't always easy, but it is the most effective. And if we do so, we can make sure that girls can be girls and not brides.
Thank you so much. What a powerful message. Thank you. Thank you so much to all of you for sharing your experiences and your insights. Thank you for the work that you do on the ground, really. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'll invite the Executive Director of UNFPA to join us on stage. She'll be giving the closing remarks. But before that, just a few statements from the member states who support the work of the Spotlight Initiative with us today. I will ask you to give us 30-second statements, please. 30 seconds, 30 if you can. Starting with the member state from Hungary, is that it? Hungary, yes. Hungary? Yes.
Well, thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to say that I represent here a country which unfortunately had a very sad experience in the 20th century in this field, since at the end of World War II, hundreds of thousands of women and girls became victims of various forms of violence committed by occupying troops. So if there is a country which is committed to eliminate violence against women and girls, this is Hungary for sure. Our society is a very family-oriented society. We support families, and ensuring healthy and safe conditions for children to grow up is very, very much in the heart of our government's policy. We firmly reject any kind of violence committed against women and girls, including domestic violence. And I would like to inform you that we have started a number of preventive programs in this regard with the title Be Aware, where we draw the attention of the society on the danger of such crimes. Because I have to tell you, since 2013 in Hungary, it is considered to be a crime according to penal code if somebody commits domestic violence. In a framework of a donor agreement, we support UN Women's project-based activities. The United Nations Trust Fund to End Violence Against Women, we support $20,000 as we support the ICRC's activities in order to end gender-based and sexual violence in humanitarian crisis with another 20,000 euros. In Hungary, family is the first. We make it sure that everybody gets the right to have a safe and secure life. This is a fundamental human right, according to our understanding. And we promise to you that we do our best to ensure that everybody's human dignity is going to be respected, especially the one of ladies and girls. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Foreign Minister Peter Szijjártó, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade for Hungary. Thank you for your support and your commitment. Please, a round of applause to Hungary with the commitment that they've made to the Spotlight Initiative. Thank you, Foreign Minister, for your remarks. And I'd like to welcome now the Director General of Global Affairs for Mexico, Ms. Camila Zapata, to give us a very short statement, if she can.
It's an honor for Mexico to be at this meeting. It shows our commitment to gender equality and the elimination of all forms of violence against women and girls, recognizing that these are strongly linked to the presence of gender stereotypes in our societies that undervalue women and girls and create barriers that impede our development and our lives. We thank UN Women and the European Union for having made the Spotlight Initiative a reality. In a country as diverse as Mexico is, the state and municipal focus of the initiative makes it provide a better support for victims of violence and access to justice and freedom without discrimination, and more information about the rights that women have, as well as the bodies they can approach if they are victims of violence. We cannot have a general problem for such a diverse problem. As a country committed to equality, Mexico expresses its full support for the Spotlight Initiative to eradicate all forms of gender-based violence so that no women or girls will have to live in fear any longer. The progress of our societies and nations will depend on women not being left behind. Thank you.
For your statement of support. Thank you. I'd like to give the floor now to Peter Eriksson. I apologize. Let's see who's up next year, because some of them are unfortunately have left us already. Yes, Peter Eriksson is here, Minister for Development Cooperation for Sweden.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I think you hear me now. Yeah. Violence against women is a problem in all countries, also in Sweden. I worked for this questions for many years in my own country, and I can say today, after many years fight, we finally have a much stronger sexual law against sexual violence against women and rape. And this new law demands consent. And I think this has made it really a more respect for young girls and a possibility for more women to go to court and say what has happened and be respected for that. I would like to take up also another question. I would like to highlight our work against gender-based violence online. These forms of threats and violence is a daily reality for women and of human rights defenders, for women journalists, and millions of young girls. Ultimately, this is a serious threat to democracy, I should say. I would like to take this opportunity to announce a new online toolbox that presents methods on how to handle issues of gender-based violence online. This is a part of our wider gender toolbox on methods of gender in development cooperation that is a public good. It can be reached at the Swedish Development Cooperation Agency SIDA's website, and I hope that it can become a valuable tool for civil society organizations and individuals alike. We must prevent gender-based violence online to protect those who are exposed and prosecute perpetrators.
Thank you so much for your remarks. Thank you. Peter Eriksson, Minister for Development Cooperation. And last but not least, from the floor, Juan Pablo de la Iglesia, Secretary of State for International Cooperation of Spain and Ibero-America and the Caribbean. Thank you for your remarks.
Thank you very much. I have to say I'm truly impressed by the ability of others to be so synthetic. Maybe in what they say, I don't know whether I'll be as short. Here we go. Violence against women is an attack on their fundamental rights and the most cruel expression of discrimination, of inequality, and of power relationships of men over women. The government of Spain is firmly committed to eliminating violence against women and girls within our borders and beyond our borders. Within Spain, we are a pioneer country in public policy against gender violence, and abroad, we are working to ensure that in our work abroad, in our consulates, Spanish consulates, that they have a specific protocol to address violence against women, Spanish women living abroad. From the very beginning, we joined this initiative, Spotlight, enthusiastically in order to fight against this structural violence. And we've just renewed our strategic plan for women, and we make specific reference to this initiative and to various countries that are included in this work. I'd like to end with a proposal. Of course, we are available to the initiative to make available to you our ability to provide some value added on the basis of our experience and the offices that we have throughout Latin America, certainly in 4 key areas: institutional support and technical training for including normative measures to promote equality, measures to promote genuine equality by strengthening public policy and building the capacity of institutions at all levels. working in planning and implementing initiatives for the empowerment of women in order to fight gender-based violence, and an exchange of knowledge and practices with other regions of the world, building on the experience and initiatives that we have, such as the Safe Women Program of UN Women in South America. All of that is at the disposal of the initiative. Thank you.
To the Spotlight Initiative, thank you so much. And in the interest of time, unfortunately, we'll have to leave it there with the member states and continue on with our program, but we accept, of course, statements from member states who did not take the floor for the record. Thank you all very much. Now, for our closing statement, I'd like to invite the United Nations Population Fund Executive Director. UNFPA is one of the leading UN agencies working to further gender equality and women's empowerment. And to tell us more about UNFPA's experience in addressing violence against women, please welcome its Executive Director, Natalia Kanem.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Mimica, Undersecretary General Phumzile Mlambo Ngcuka, Excellencies, colleagues, partners, and friends. I am here today on behalf of all the heads of the Spotlight Initiative partner agencies, UNDP, UNFPA, UN Women, and UNICEF, along with all agencies that participate in Spotlight. I'm here to affirm our joint commitment to ending violence against women and girls by the year 2030. The European Union United Nations Spotlight Initiative represents a new way of working for the United Nations system across our agencies, across our mandates and operations. And we, all of us, the United Nations partner agencies, are leveraging our comparative advantages to ensure that the initiative's country programs provide high-quality services and protect women and girls from the violence that 1 in 3 of us face. Across the more than 25 countries that the Spotlight Initiative's program cover, we are working with governments to provide a gender lens to prevent and respond to violence in support of national priorities, such as action on climate change, employment, and economic recovery. We're building on experiences from other UN joint programs, notably the joint programs on ending child marriage and female genital mutilation. They offer lessons on tackling the root causes of violence and addressing the harmful norms that perpetuate gender inequality. Our UN agencies are indeed working together. We are united to scale up the Essential Services Initiative to deliver multi-sectoral responses that address violence against women and girls in an integrated, comprehensive fashion. Government stakeholders, the civil society organizations, and media networks are being mobilized to change social norms, engage with local communities, and ramp up the initiative's implementation. I have seen this with my own eyes during recent visits to Niger and to the Pacific region. The political headwinds that we face, working to ensure that every woman and girl has access to high-quality sexual and reproductive health services and can exercise her right, her reproductive rights, must motivate all of us to do more, to do better, and to do it together faster. The increasing number of humanitarian crises spur us to better innovate to address the immediate needs of women and girls affected by natural disasters and conflict. We must take advantage of new opportunities on the horizon to advocate for gender equality and ensure that no woman or girl is left behind. The upcoming ICPD 25 Summit in Nairobi in November this year will enable global leaders to step up commitments to address sexual and reproductive health needs of women and girls. And next year, as we commemorate the 25th anniversary of the Beijing Platform of Action, we will promote generation equality and build on the women's movement to reach critical mass with the next generation of women's rights activists. This week's UN Climate Summit has also been a major opportunity to raise awareness about the importance of understanding and addressing violence against women, including women human rights defenders, in the context of protecting our environment. Now more than ever, it is time to galvanize the peoples of the world, governments, and civil society to end the scourge of violence. We would like to thank the European Union once again for your leadership, and in particular, Commissioner Mimica, you for your visionary signal contributions. Thank you very much. We also thank our valiant civil society partners, the community groups who are leading this fight on the ground. We, as the United Nations Spotlight Initiative partners, will continue doing our part to ensure that all women and girls can live in a world in larger freedom, free from violence and discrimination. Our work jointly together is going to bring happiness, freedom, and peace into the hearts, the homes, and the communities of countless women and girls around the world. Thank you so much for your presence today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kanem. And this year, of course, marks 50 years of UNFPA. Congratulations on this important milestone. Thank you so much for those closing remarks. So that brings us to the end of this high-level event for the Spotlight Initiative. Thank you for Spotlight for making a real and lasting difference in the lives of women and girls. Thank you to all the participants and everyone who came here today, and to all of you watching online, of course. And to stay engaged in the conversation going forward, please follow Spotlight Initiative at spotlightinitiative.org, and on social media, of course, the hashtag Spotlight End Violence. And let's remember, as we heard from all of our panelists today, that we all have a role to play in ending violence against women and girls. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you. Ten minutes.